Good evening. This is Kathy L. Murphy, the Pulpwood Queen, and tonight I am here with my co-host of our book and film club, our international Pulpwood Queens and Timber Guys book club Reading Nation co-host Robert Gwaltney. And we also have with us not author, podcaster of Bollywood and Books, Lovelace Cook. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Kathy.
And I wanted to show that we are right on time for our show tonight because we're going back to a 1939 classic. And I even had out my Art Deco mirror to make sure that my little cheetah and I looked okay. So we are ready to go. Robert, this was your idea to pick this classic film, The Women. And why did you pick it for tonight?
Oh my gosh. Well, so I think that it's been called crudely a sophisticated bitch fest, which the humor is amazing. The women are beautiful, old Hollywood glamour, and just witty repartee. I mean, the dialogue is spot on. It's amazing. It has the opening sequences have just this fantastic cadence to it. It's hard not to love the women.
Well, all the women are stars. I mean, pretty much every one of them. We know their names, and I know that you can watch it on Amazon for $1.99. So I found it there, and I rewatched it. I hadn't seen it since I was a kid, and it's a lot different from when I was a child seeing it. Of course, I was watching Little Mary, when I was watching it, but now I was fascinated with the cattiness of the script and dialogue, and because capturing women, gossiping, that's what they were doing. They were gossiping. They went to the manicurist, and they, your wonderful, I was looking for a jungle red lipstick, and this is as close as I could get, but my grandmother of that era, she told me, never go to town cat soup without your lipstick on, and she always wore that color, that jungle red, and she would wear the red nails, and women went to the salon for, now I don't remember all the mud baths and all the massages and all that, but where I was from in Kansas, you had a standing appointment usually every Friday or Saturday to get your hair and nails done. And of that era, the women, I have to tell you, watching that film, the power of these women, and I think they were ahead of us, because I think we fell back behind the times, because the men were soon going off to war. These women took charge, and they ran the whole, their families, their children, and everything. They did it all. And they did it all in heels, lipstick, and dressed to the nines. But I love that they went out to have these wonderful pampering treatments done. And for those that have not watched the movie, this is a story about, is it 7 women?
Uh, Well, actually, I mean, the cast is enormous. There might be 7 core women. I believe they're like the play, which the film is based on, had 130 speaking parts in it.
It's absolutely phenomenal. And there are no men in the film whatsoever. And we will not talk about the ending, because that's kind of the big surprise. You're just getting too close to me, Cheetah. So anyway, I love the show, and we've got Norma Shearer, who, I mean, was there any bigger star? Joan Crawford, who plays Crystal, the other woman. My goodness, this was before she really did the eyebrows like I've got, and the lips. This was more when she was, she started out as a blonde when she first did films, bleach blonde, and it didn't suit her. Just like Lucille Ball started out as a blonde, and then she found her signature red hair. And do you know that wasn't hair color? Do you know what she used?
I do not.
Henna.
Henna. A henna treatment.
Hennaed her hair, and to get that color, and it was her own signature color. But people were really into all of and it was hairdressing more than hair, it's actually where you arrange the hair.
Right.
And I always found that fascinating. I watched a tutorial today on doing a 1940s style. And so I emulated it. And, I've got all these crazy wound up curls up on top. It's really not that hard. It's just a different way of doing things. They set their hair with rag rollers. Do you remember the rag and pin curls?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And when I was back in beauty school in 1977, we had to learn how to do pin curled hairdos. And that Norma Shearer do, where she slicked it down and then had this like almost permed look. I mean, if I put that on, I look like, I don't know what I look like.
The interesting thing about Norma Shearer is that, she did not have a lovely, she did not have a very a super feminine shape. She was very broad shouldered. When she came to Hollywood to do a screen test, it was a disaster. She had very light blue eyes, and she has what they would call a slight cast, which means that one of her eyes sort of crossed a bit. And so you had to really know how to light her for her to appear well on the screen.
Wow.
And so I forget who it was that passed by. She had just seen her screen test. She was devastated. It was awful. And she was weeping. And then they said, well, okay, come on, let's try again. Let's see what we can do. And, so she really is, she knew how to comport herself. She knew how to exude glamour, but she really wasn't, a classically beautiful woman. So they did a lot of tricks. Her hairstyle was really to help camouflage that cast she had to her eye, the way that they would position her, the way that they would light her. And she had these special exercises that she would do with her eyes so that when they filmed her, it didn't wander.
Well, isn't that interesting? And, she was not a busty girl. She was very, but she knew how to enhance it. There's one taffeta dress that's off the shoulder, stunning. The clothes and the fashion in this show and Adrian was the costume designer. I look to see, because I've always been fascinated with costumes and the costumes and the fashion shows. And we think today that we are risque. Let me tell you, some of those little tennis outfits that they showed where they're batting the racket and everything at the fashion show, I was going, boy, those skirts are pretty short, and they talk about today how girls just show everything. There's been other times in history where the clothing, the negligees, all of that they were very sheer.
Absolutely. Well, those 1930s fashions were not forgiving. I mean, they practically, they really little to no undergarments. So whatever construction they had to be built into the clothing. So you really did have to have a lovely physique to be able to pull those fashions off.
And they had all that marabou and everything, and the satin sheets. I remember years ago touring the mansion, the estate of Hearst. Oh gosh, why can't I think of it? Hearst. San Simeon. I was in love with the bedclothes. They were all lavender or kind of a corally peach, and they were satins and quilted, and they had just flowing skirts from the top of the mattress down to the bottom, and pillows with ruffles all in satin. And I'm thinking, man, you just slide right out of that bed if you slept in it. And the beds weren't that big, but people weren't as big as they are now either.
Exactly.
But they were beautiful, and those were commonly used colors for bedrooms was white or coral or lavenders. They were real muted shades. And then the suits that they wore and everything back then, most of the ones we saw, did you notice in the film, that it's in black and white, but when it went to the fashion show, it went to color?
Yeah.
I didn't remember that. And the only other film that I remember as a kid watching was The Wizard of Oz, because, it started out in Kansas, it's black and white. And then when they land in Oz, everything goes into color. So have you seen the film Lovelace? Oh, you've got to see it, because these women their conversation is Well, like,
So so Kathy, so there's this opening. So you know when when they're going into Sydney's, which is the salon, well, you know they based that on Elizabeth Arden.
oh, I believe it
Yeah,
because I used to work for Elizabeth Arden
and
and
when
she was of that era. Yeah,
and when
absolutely.
Elizabeth Arden saw the film, she was beside herself that they'd ripped off the interior of her salon.
Did they have a red door?
I know. I don't know that they from the exterior that they have the red door, but there's this. So I love this. This is an example of that witty repartee they have. So this is between two of the spa workers.
Oh yeah,
So
Olga. Was it Olga?
as Olive,
Oh,
Olive.
okay.
So they're talking about this one woman. This is an exchange between two women, and she says she's telling the client, "You don't look a day over 35. That
Oh
old
yeah.
gasoline truck. She's 60 if she's a minute. Who is she? Gillingswater. Oh, that old bag. One more permanent. She won't have a hair on her head. She's got plenty on her arms, baby."
I about died over some of those things. Or what about when Crystal she's a sales clerk. They called her a beezy. A beezy was a shop clerk, a young modern woman who worked in a department store, and it wasn't a good phrase. I mean, it was a phrase meaning that these women that worked there were maybe not as kind of the way beauticians used to have a reputation. Shop girls did too. But she's trying to get out of work, and she's finishing off her sales receipts and everything for the day, and this man is coming to her house for dinner, and he calls, and that conversation with the other girls shooting things back and forth, it's absolutely, the timing is impeccable. But then the little girl, and she was in Gone with the Wind.
Oh, this was Butterfly McQueen's film debut.
Yes. And she shows up and she says, listen, go to my house and cook dinner for me. And she goes, I'm tired. I don't want to go. And she goes, I'll give you $2 if you'll go over there. And she goes, I don't know how to cook. And she goes, can you give me 3? And she goes, just how hard is it to throw a pork chop in the oven? And she goes, well, do you even have anything to cook with? And she goes, here's some money, go to the store. And I'm thinking, she gave her the keys to her apartment. She gave her money to go cook this dinner. And
well, and I love too when she said, would you even have anything to cook? And the other girl says, cobwebs and gin.
well, I have a feeling, but there were so many lines like that. I was just going, oh my gosh, if that happened today, everybody would probably be going, oh, this is so politically incorrect. But I would love to see a remake of this film. And did you say there was a remake?
There had been a modern reimagining of it that I don't think that was particularly good. I had been really excited about it. I think that where they missed the mark, I think they should have just gone back and set it in the 1930s. I think it would have been a lot of fun.
Well, I think you could do it, but I think you have to set it in a city like Chicago or New York, someplace. Right. And women still go to the manicurist, women still go to the beauty shop, women still go for massage and the exercising. Oh, when Rosalind Russell was doing those, laying on that floor mattress, doing those, I mean, she didn't have much on. She was flipping her legs back and forth. And I'm going, oh my goodness. But I had told you earlier my great Rosalind Russell story. Do you remember Paul Harvey? The rest of the story. I was listening to it, and she started off as a swimmer. She was a diver, and she even went to the Olympics to represent our country as a diver. And the story that Paul Harvey told, and I may not get it exactly right because it's been years, but I never forgot it, was she had on a jersey swimming suit, which is what they were tanks suits. But in the back, the straps went over her shoulder, and then it just met and came down with one piece, and it was buttoned to the bottoms with a big button. So when she went up onto the diving board to do the big swan dive, she did the swan dive and the button popped and her whole top came down. And so when she dove into the water, she'd completely lost her suit. People are scrambling, trying to get her a towel. But for, you know how many seconds it is before, you know, you hit the water.
You have to hold that position for a minute.
I'm going, oh my goodness. And then later she went on to some of the best, my favorite films. Oh, I know one we've got to do, Auntie Maine.
Yeah.
Auntie Maine, and with little Patrick, you know, that was one of my favorite movies as a child and my favorite movie today. And she played, oh, this is another great one. She played the mother in Gypsy, the story of Gypsy Rose Lee. That would be another good one. So, but I was thinking if we did it today, who would we cast as the actresses to portray some of those parts? I mean, Olga the manicurist, I loved her. She was just darling. But the first person that came to mind who's elegant and who, you know, you just, when she's in front of the camera, you can't take your eyes off her. I thought of Jennifer Lawrence. I thought Jennifer Lawrence could play maybe the Norma Shearer character. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then I was trying to think of, I was thinking Dakota Fanning could play.
Well, the Fanning sisters both.
Both of them, but I was just trying to think of some, or the girl who starred in The Queen's Gambit.
Oh, she's amazing. Yeah.
I was trying to think of some of those people that we could play, but I thought it might be even fun to put in some of the young, more multicultural actors and actresses in it too, to make it more timely for today. And I just was imagining in my mind some of the people that could play those parts. One of my favorite actresses starred in the movie on, and you always think of the name and I can't think of her. She starred in the movie about Howard Hughes. She played Katharine Hepburn.
Oh yes, Cate Blanchett.
Oh, I love her. I love her. But I was trying to think who could play the Countess. And I thought, looking at myself in the mirror today, I said, I'm there.
You could.
I could play the Countess.
Well, I love her because she is, well, she's, you know, she's got such charisma, you know, and there's that line, you know, that she goes, it's like, what was it? L'amour. She's always talking about love.
Yeah, she's always doing French and nobody's knowing what she's talking about. And then she's married to that awesome guy, Buck.
Right, Buck. Who the radio show host.
Yeah, well, she made him a radio show host because where did she meet him? She made her, she's been married like many times. And she falls madly in love with Buck. And he's from the country.
Yes, he's I don't know, he might be a Texan.
Yeah, he probably is, because that's what they always make. They either make them those kind of roles, they're either from the South. Remember the Southern character of the last husband that Rosalind Russell married in
Maine.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that guy was hilarious. But you never see him. You never see the men in the movies. You just hear them talking about Buck and Stephen. I'm Mrs. Stephen Harrigan. You know, she's just so society. And it reminded me too, and I know a lot of people who watch this won't remember this, but when you got married, you never went by your name anymore. You went by Mrs. You know, my mother was Mrs. Lawrence R. Murphy, and that's what it would print on her checks. And the checks were counter checks. You go into a store and then have them a little holder, and you just pull out your bank one and you write out a check. They were called counter checks. Nobody had their own checkbooks. And you had also in department stores, you had, they didn't have credit cards, but they had charge accounts. Put this on my account and deliver it to me, please. And that was pretty priceless. But then there was also, I almost brought out my Happy Fragrance because I thought there's this iconic scene in it where they're talking about summer rain, this fabulous fragrance. You know, Mrs. Stephen Harrigan wears summer rain. And she goes, I think this one would be lovely. And her friend smelling it, she goes, oh no, That one is not for you. The crystal, the shotgun.
Crystal Allen.
Yeah, she says, it is not for you because it's called oomph. And Rosalind Russell, you know, who names a fragrance oomph?
Well,
I thought that was pretty funny. But this
Well-
was yeah, go ahead.
Well, you know, at the time, so Norma Shearer, Joan Crawford, and Rosalind Russell were all big names, and there were rivals, you know, in the motion picture industry. There's this. I heard that Rosalind Russell called in sick during filming until Norma Shearer would agree to share top billing, and then eventually she relented. But there's also this funny story where they were going to do publicity stills. And Joan Crawford and Norma Shearer would not be the first person to go into the studio. So they would stay in their limousines, so they would circle the studio until director George Cukor got there and called them in.
You know, and you know, Rosalind Russell always played such likable characters. She was kind of bad, man.
Well, yeah, she was a sneak. She was a snake in the grass, really.
Yeah.
She was allegedly married Norma Shearer's one of her best friends, and of course, the whole premise is that, you know, and Norma Shearer's mother, I think, gave her some of the best advice. You know, never listen to your girlfriends; they will ensure that you are without a husband and that your life is in ruins. That they will not be happy until that happens.
And it's, you know, I said my first thought after seeing it after all these years, I go, some things never change, because when it came time, when she finds out her husband is philandering and has a mistress, her mother tells her, darling, she goes, he loves you. This is just a passing thing. She goes, just act like it never happened, you know? And she's going, no, you know, I love him. And how could he do this to me? And she goes, take my advice. She goes, this happened to me. Father, you know, and she says, and look, we had a wonderful marriage, you know, and of course he died. But anyway, I just thought, but I mean, all of her friends were just going, don't say anything, you know, don't say anything. Well, then she just gets goaded into doing, getting out of her comfort zone. And because Rosalind Russell stirs the pot so much in this film, it's just like casting disaster upon everybody. But it's a wonderful, it's when, you know, when you go to the movies when people were really acting. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't special effects. It was conversations. It reminds me a lot of theater. When you go to the theater, you know, you get more interaction between the people. I like those stories. Those are my favorite ones. If they get too much special effects, I'm out of there. Well, I've gotten up, and I think I left on the last Batman movie. I said, you got to be kidding me. I just said, no, not going to do it. But I do think that this movie was probably very popular at the time, wasn't it?
Well, it was a play that was written by Claire Booth Luce.
Yes.
But did you know, and I found this fascinating, that F. Scott Fitzgerald had uncredited, he was uncredited but he actually had a part in writing the screenplay.
I can see that. I can definitely see that. That was his, you know, wealthy, you know, drama. Wealthy people having drama, trauma, whatever you want to call it. I could see that definitely, because you know, his wife was such a drama queen. Oh, well, I did not know that. That's fascinating. And at the beginning of the film, as you're opening, they show all the main characters, and then they also show an animal that represents their character like traits. And the first thing it shows is a little deer, and it's just darling. And
that's Norma Shearer.
Norma Shearer was the deer. And then it went to, I'm trying to think what it was next. I go, this is so cool. I've never seen this ever done in a film before, but it compared, was it Rosalind Russell, or was it Christelle was the fox? Who was the
so the leopard, I believe, was Crystal Allen, Joan Crawford. I think the fox was Rosalind Russell.
Yeah. And I was thinking, and then one poor character was a cow, another was a horse, and but it was really different of how they thought. There were a lot of things done in this film that I hadn't seen in a lot of older films. The going from black and white to color, the fashions were exquisite. I mean, they were really, they didn't look like costumes. They really looked like the fashions of that era. And they were over the top. I wanted to attach a scarf that went under the chin. Do you remember the one that it was like a drape that went under the chin? And I guess that's to hide the waddle that we have under our chins. But I think it was Rosalind Russell that had it on, but it was just a black drape that went under her chin. And I just thought, that's fabulous. What a great idea. But I laughed at the ending, and I know it's not funny, but I just thought, oh, and life goes on wonderfully with the well,
So this is, and I won't spoil the end, but this is one of Crystal Allen's favorite famous lines at the end. And by the way, there's a name for you ladies, but it isn't used in high society outside a kennel.
You got the picture. You got the one-liners, the zingers, the dialogue was spot on, and they did it all, you know, dressed to the nines, and just, I mean, the department store and how they treated the department store clerks was just terrible. I mean, you go away. I said, go away, you know, and then the exercise girl that was helping them, the two girls exercise, she was mean. I just got to laughing at her, but I've had the feeling she was fed up with these people. But they get mud baths, they get all these, you know, manicures and treatments, and it's just so funny to me. But those, you know, especially now, those things aren't happening because so many hair salons are closed. I think their manicure stations are open back up, but you know, behind the big plexiglass pieces or whatever. But it's a wonderful film, and you can definitely see, because it sets standards. It's the time period, it's the dress, it's the talk, it's the makeup, it's the beauty, it's the glamour, and it's also about relationships of all these women. You know, it was hard for me to believe, as bad as they talked about each other, that they were friends. I kind of reminded me of those housewife movies. You know, they are those reality shows about the housewives of Orange County or New Jersey. I kind of have the feeling, are they really friends, some of them? Because they get into these big old cat fights. But how old were you when you watched this film for the first time?
Oh my gosh, I had a little boy, you know, and of course, you know, I see it through a different lens now, but I remember just being fascinated by it, just the glamour of it initially, and just how, you know, how fast paced it was and how quick speaking that the women were. Of course, I've always had an ear for dialogue, so I've always been fascinated about quick moving dialogue, especially between women.
And the other thing that I was really noticeable to me is when they bought perfume bottles, they weren't little.
No.
They're big old bottles. I mean, I'm going, and they have like a built-in bookcase in their bathroom with just those big, gigantic bottles. And I think that perfume would go bad before, you know, you could ever use it all up. But they were big bottles. I mean, the one that was called Summer Rain had some kind of creature with an umbrella.
Yeah.
On top of even the bottle. So it was about this big, and I'm thinking, wonder what Summer Rain actually smelled like.
I know.
I want to know who wrote the screenplay. I heard you say that F. Scott Fitzgerald added to it, but with that kind of repartee and the dialogue, who was the screenwriter, or who were the screenwriters?
I'm checking my notes. So it was definitely, well, it was based on Claire Booth Luce's.
Right.
It was directed by George Cukor, you know, and I don't know exactly who got full credit for the screenplay. Let me do a quick Google.
Thank you. Because when you said George Cukor, that you know, that's kind of his style, isn't it?
Oh, he was definitely the director that women wanted to work for. He was considered a women's director, and he was the original director for Gone with the Wind, and he was replaced, which Vivian Leigh was quite upset about because she believed that she got support that she needed when they were filming Gone with the Wind. But so he was ideally suited for the women.
And it makes a real difference who is directing to the films, because you hear actors and actresses all the time say, I love working with this director. No, I mean, it's funny. One director told Shah Rukh Khan that he couldn't understand the popularity of him. He wasn't. He was too chocolatey. He wasn't light or dark enough. And I think, and he was ugly. He also told him he was ugly. Can you imagine going to be in a film and the director tells you you're ugly? I mean, that put a little bit. I was in a play once where the director was mean to me. I mean, so mean. It was bad, and I never did know why. I never did know why they were so mean to me. But anyway.
Lovelace, I have an answer for you.
Oh, good.
Interestingly enough, it was adapted for the screen by two women writers, Anita Luce and Jane Murfin. And it was their responsibility to make the film acceptable for the production code of the time. So I'm assuming that the play version was a bit more risque, and then of course it had to go through production code. So the screenplay had to comply with all of those special things. But I think that the great thing I think that what made some of these films so interesting is that to get around production code, they had to be very creative and inventive, and especially when they're dialogue, like that piece that I just read about, about the kennel, rather than just coming out and calling someone a bitch, they had this very interesting way of being able to get the point across.
Well, in the fashion show, they had a girl come out in a full line girdle, and she goes, it doesn't have any bones and it zips up the back, and that's all she's got on, with a little sheer thing over it. And I'm thinking, it was a girdle, a full, like they used in my mother's times, they used to wear. When I was a kid, I used to think, why do you want to wear that? And they said, so you won't jiggle when you walk. And I thought, what's wrong with jiggling? I mean, I said, when I grow up, I'm never going to wear, my mother used to wear dress shields. Do you know what those are?
I don't think I know what a dress shield.
Oh my gosh. I
remember.
They had white, they were a triangle, and they went under your armpit, and they went around your arm, underneath, over your slip. You put them on, and then when you put on your suit or whatever, the sweat would go into I guess they didn't have antiperspirant. They just had deodorant back then. The sweat wouldn't cause a stain on your suit. It'd go into these thick cotton arm shields. And I just go, I remember my mother parading around with all that garbage and those buckles where you put the hose to and clip them on. And when they'd sit down, it'd leave the mark in your leg. I go, does that hurt? And she goes, well, if you want to look good in your suit. And they wore them real silhouetted suits, and cocktail dresses, they wear those. So there's nothing on Spanx today Spanx at least got a little give, but, and they have Manx for men. You know that?
I've heard that.
Yes. They have Manx. I was in Dillard's with my dad, which is a department store here. And he was looking at shirts and he goes, what is that? And it was a man in a Manx. And it's like a t-shirt, but it's made out of the same thing as Spanx, and it holds your chest tight so that when you wear a shirt, you don't see sag.
There you go.
I know. Somebody was on a talk show the other night and he said, you're looking good. And he goes, I got on my Manx. I'm thinking, I think it was Jamie Foxx. I thought, what does he need one for? He's not that old, but it was funny. Isn't it funny how fashions have changed? That's back when buttons were important. I mean, they were those 30s and 40s buttons were the coolest things. They're little works of art.
They were, absolutely.
And the hat, I don't know if you can see this hat, but this hat has a feather that curls.
Yeah, I love the hat.
I've got a lot of hats. I pick them up wherever I see them. And it's got like little marabou stuff too. And I had 3. I couldn't decide which one, but I thought this one looked like the one in the movie. But I love hats. I wear them today. I mean, I would wear this with a black suit to church and wouldn't think anything of it. That's why the ladies in my hometown church say, well, half the time we went to church to see what you'd have on. But I've always thought it was fun to play dressing. So.
Well, I think that, I miss that level of, I guess, the modern world, I guess it's great that we can be a little bit more laid back, but I love there being a bit of formality to people making an effort to go out and to look their best.
My dream in life, and it's never happened yet, was to dress to the nines to go to the opera. I mean, not just wearing a pair of black pants and a turtleneck and a scarf. I mean, did you see Moon, the Cher movie where she went to the opera and
Moonstruck, yeah.
Moonstruck. I said, I would love to go to the opera one time and just dress to the nines with the gloves and everything. And, people go, you're crazy. Or dancing at the Rainbow Room. I just thought, I'd love to go dancing at the Rainbow Room. That's why Eric Phillips, when we were going to have our girlfriend weekend, he said, the next time I come, I will teach you some ballroom dancing, because he's a professional tango. He knows all these dances. And I was so looking forward to it, because he always dresses to the nines everywhere he goes. And I love those old movies. That's why I watch so many of them, because I like that age of, men put on a hat and a suit and an overcoat to go to work. And they were businessmen and they look like businessmen. Now you can't tell anybody from anybody. I don't know about you, but I got on a plane one time with a guy in a pair of boxers and a wife beater shirt and flip-flops. And he ordered 5 Bloody Marys. And I was like,
I'm appalled at what people will. Yeah, there was a time where air travel was very glamorous and people would dress for it.
Oh, he's a Pan Am, I just loved it. I always dressed when I flew to New York, because first of all, you never knew if you're going to get your luggage or not. So I always wanted to have a suit or something on, so that in case I didn't get my luggage till a day or two, I had something professional to wear. But most of the time
or if they have to pull my body out of the wreckage, I'm looking amazing.
Oh, and I even brought out my special Biltmore teacup so I could share with you,
That's a lovely teacup. The next time I'm at Biltmore, I'm definitely going to have to buy some of that china. That's beautiful.
Oh, I even bought a miniature tea set that is navy blue and gold, the 24 karat gold. But this, I have the creamer, the sugar, and the coffee cup. And so, and you can't get it online. You got to go there. But the Biltmore, if you want to go back into the past of a time and day, Cornelia Vanderbilt's bedroom is my dream bedroom. Oh, the walls are satin with flocked velvet.
That's the room. That's the bedroom suite. I think that they've most recently renovated. Right? They brought it back.
Actually, plexiglass over the walls now, so people wouldn't touch it. But they have one bedroom in the house that was her mother's, I believe, and the walls are all gold satin, thick gold satin. The entire walls in the room. I could live there. That's my fantasy, is I could live there, go to the opera. I have big dreams. Someday that's what I'll get to do if I go to heaven. So.
Well, I'll have to go to the opera and get dressed up. I told Timothy that I'd love for the two of us to get dressed up, put on a tux, and go to the opera here in Atlanta.
Oh, that sounds like a plan. Well, it's going to be a while before we all get back together. So do you have any questions about the film at all? Do you get the premise of the story? It's all these girls who all are running the same circles.
Manhattan socialites.
Yeah, they're Manhattan socialites, but they also have men problems. And all men are philanderers. I mean, that's pretty much you know, they never know. And half the women have been married multiple times, and they just try to upgrade each time they get married, get a richer and richer one. But because I
As one would.
the the countess said, well, the first three I didn't get much money from, but the last one, no, it wasn't the last one because that was Buck. I don't know, but I'll have to watch it again. But you can watch it on YouTube for $1.99, which is a real deal, and it takes you back to a time which was my grandmother's era. My grandmother and grandfather got married in 1932, and you know, I just love the films of that 30s, 40s. Those are my favorites.
You know, Kathy, I love those clothes, and I'm older than you are, and
You're
Robert
younger
too.
than me.
But I don't think so. I'm older than you are. But I found in my grandmother's attic in a trunk some of these wonderful dresses, and I used to wear them to parties. I mean, they were, you know, with the shoulder pads and the silk
You still
charmeuse.
got them?
No, no. You know what? I gave one to the writer Beth Ann Finley. I don't know if you know
her.
who you know Beth Ann, because one I couldn't wear it anymore, and I loved when I worked in New York. I had a wonderful wardrobe. I was also a size 6. Well, that's those are days. Those days are long gone. But I used to love to dress up too and wear gorgeous clothes like that because they
Well,
were so glamorous.
we kind of get to live out our fantasies watching that, especially since for the past year and now going into a half, I've been living in my pajamas. Sometimes I wear the fancy ones because I'm tired of the ones I paint in. But I really look forward to the book and film night because I love the movies, and I love that Robert and we have a lot of the same taste. And I love that people jump on board and we can have this conversation. And then what I really love is when they watch the movies and then they come back after our show is downloaded on the Kathy L. Murphy channel. TK Thorne email last week. She says, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I'd never seen Best in Show. And she went on and on about it. And so it's really nice because we're making these connections because they're really just sharing stories. Screenwriters are telling stories, and everybody says, well, the same stories are told over and over, but there's so many twists and turns. And I watch a movie almost every night. That's how I just kind of wind down after a busy day because I'm on the computer all day. Today I got bumped off of Google. I don't know what happened. The electricity went off for some weird reason. And when it came back on, I went to type in my password and it didn't work. Well, have you ever said forgot password and then they text you the thing? Then you put in that code and they said for a double protection, we're sending to your old email address another verification number. Well, I hadn't used that thing in years. So I had to go find it, and I realized I didn't remember the password for it. So I had to get a new one for that. It took me all day to get back. And then I looked at the messages, and Mandy and I are Mandy Haynes, who's our executive director, and I are laughing because today we debuted the magazine, which is
Fabulous.
Yeah. And she said, oh, I just hope people will want to get the covers. She sold out of the covers. She sold out for the year. And she's selling inside ads for all our Pulpit Queen authors. And she said, I didn't think anybody really want to do this. I said, I told you they're going to be a part of this. So she had her second shot today, so she's not feeling too good. That's why she's not here tonight. But she was trying to do all this stuff with that second shot. Have you guys had your second shots yet?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Did you have any reaction?
I had no issues. I was fortunate.
For a day, 24 hours. I was not great.
I had a little fever and felt pretty bad and woozy kind of, but after I slept on it and the next day I was fine. But it beats the other. So here we go all together. Now, while you're here, Lovelace, tell us about what's going on with Bollywood and books.
Oh, Kathy, I just launched my website and published the first episode, and I was a little bit delayed because I wanted the website and the episode to be live at the same time. And I, I've had a great time. It's been great fun working on it. I have a six-toed cat that is dying to get out. He's just, cruising underneath my legs right now. Just be patient.
Well, so if we go on Bollywood and Books, we can watch your first.
You can listen to the first episode, and I think Kathy set me a challenge. I mean, I wanted to interview her. I've got the audio thing down, and I was thinking, but gosh, the visual, having the opportunity to interact face to face, we can read each other's body language. It's much easier when you can see someone's face. Get off the table.
What's your cat's name?
This is Six Toes.
Six Toes. There you go.
Six Toes has actually 7 toes, but Six Toes sounded better than 7.
It's the coolest thing. I saw it. It was the coolest thing. My sister had a cat named Tidy Bowl.
Tidy Bowl?
He liked to play in the...
Kathy, I now have to get a YouTube channel so that we can post and I don't know how much I'm going to have to edit. We talked a long time. There's an hour.
Play it for as long as you want.
So I'm excited. And by the way, I've been talking about it with my Zoom. I have Zoom calls every Saturday. I'm talking with people literally all over the world. Well, they want to know who the Pulpwood Queen is. They want to see your picture. I was telling them about the crown, the tiara from the Paris Opera, that was found in the flea market in Paris. Because I was speaking with someone who was in Paris, and she has a little podcast called Postcards from Paris. And I said, "Oh, Kathy, but it was a small group, so I was bragging on you." And
the connections just keep getting made. But yeah, my friend Margie Dilday found that at the flea market in Paris, and it was a Parisian opera. They used to wear it when you went to the opera. You wear a tiara, and by God, if I go to the opera, I'm wearing that tiara. I mean,
absolutely.
So, and I'm going to wear something fabulous. So. That's great. Well, just send it to my website. They'll see lots of pictures. Or Facebook. I change it every day. I'm gonna post some pictures of me with this. I watched a tutorial today. It was the 1940s, but this movie was made in 1939. It was, so I did a little bit different, but anyway, the girl who did her hair, I shared it today. It was fascinating. She was a redhead, and she did it perfectly. But she set her hair on rollers, and I didn't do that. So, but anyway, it's a lot of fun. Well, we don't want your cat to feel. I know because he's
just annoyed. He's annoyed with me.
Well, when won't pay any attention to you, but if you get on the phone or if you get on a Zoom, I'll have them usually all around me. And I can't believe I just fed them. So that's why they're not here. But we have a lot of fun. And so did we decide what we're going to do next week, Robert?
Yes, we're going to talk about the Oscars.
Yes, we're going to have an Oscar party next Saturday night. And Robert and I are going to vote ahead of time, and we're going to announce our winners. And we have a special Oscar for the Book and Film Club, and I call it the Robert. And this is an Art Deco piece that I found years and years ago, and I saw it and I said, this can be our, not Oscar, but our Robert, because it's so elegant and dapper. And so we're going to have an Oscar party next week. So we're going to ask everybody who joins us to glam up, put on the sequins, put on the Hollywood. I mean, you only have to do the top, because I've got my pajama bottoms on down below. So whatever, I'm like the newscaster who sits with the suit coat and he's in his shorts and flip-flops underneath. So we're going to have our Oscar party at 6:30. We're going to talk about, maybe our favorite Oscar moments. I have several that just stand out in my mind. My all-time favorite Oscar presenter was Bob Hope. I love Bob Hope. And then Johnny Carson was pretty good too. But recently, my favorite host was, I loved Hugh Jackman. he put on a song and dance number that was awesome. And I was just, and then the guy who played Doogie Howser, he did it one year. He did a great job.
Neil Patrick Harris.
Patrick Harris, he was fabulous too. So we'll talk about all those things. We'll talk about all the movies that are up, like Manx and The Sound of
Metal.
White Tiger. What's some more of them that are up for best film?
Have you read White Tiger?
I haven't read it, but I watched the film.
It's a wonderful, wonderful book.
Well, I will read it. And that might be a good one to bring on for our international reads, because that story just haunts me. And then the wonderful story about the Asian couple that moved to Missouri to start the farm. They worked at chicken factories, and their job was to determine sex of chicks. Did you know that on chicks, if they're male, they kill the chick? They just keep the females because they're the only ones that lay the eggs.
I did not know that. That's awful.
There's a lot of things in this movie. It was wonderfully portrayed by this family, and it was really good. It was really a good movie. I've watched all of them now, but for some reason, I guess it's my 64-year-old mind. I can't remember. I can remember what I ate for breakfast as a kid, but I can't remember what I had this morning. Maybe I'm getting Alzheimer's or dementia, but nah. I just think my mind is so filled up with all the books and movies and things that I've seen. It's kind of like the files are bulging and full. So I've got Robert to fill in. Go ahead, Robert.
So we've got the nominees for best film: The Father.
Oh yes.
Judas and the Black Messiah.
Yep.
Mank. Minari. Nomadland, starring Frances McDormand.
Oh my gosh, that was fantastic. Yeah.
Promising Young Woman.
Yep.
Sound of Metal, and the Trial of the Chicago 7.
Yep. The only one I have not seen, I don't think I've seen the Judas one yet. I think I started to watch it and haven't seen it, but I've seen pretty much all of them. But I forgot about No Man Land. That's a good movie. Really good. Frances
McDormand. I love her.
Oh my gosh, it's a good story. But I've noticed a trend in the movies. They all seem to be getting more violent and more sad.
Yeah, I think that in order to win an Academy Award, the film certainly can't be amusing. I don't know that
I wish they would add comedy.
Yeah,
they would add comedy as a category, because some of the best films I've ever seen are comedies. And I think it's just a crying shame that comedies are not, because it's harder to make people laugh than it is to cry. Ask any stand-up comedian. It's hard. It's really hard. People that can make me laugh out loud in a book, I pay attention to.
Well, it's fascinating that I think that Sasha Baron Cohen, was nominated for actor in the Trial of the Chicago 7, and you would never think of Sasha Baron Cohen as being a serious actor, but I do think that if you are comedic, I think you have the chops to be an amazing actor.
Oh my gosh, look at Jim Carrey. He can play a straight character, and so can the comedian that played Batman.
Oh yes, the original remake Batman movie, and I've totally blanked.
But I know. He was in Beetlejuice.
Yes.
I can think of what movies they're in. See, now if it's a book, I can usually remember it. Movies, I have a little bit harder time, but I'm on the search for that one 1930 movie that I told you about. I can't remember the name of it, but I will find it. But we've got a lot of great movies coming up that we're going to be discussing, and we just can't thank you enough for joining us, Lovelace. Is there anything else we want to mention about the women before we go on?
No, except that it's a wonderful movie. Make yourself a lovely martini, sit back and enjoy.
Well, Or you could bring out the breathless wine because they, drink a lot of champagne in this movie too. But what is the last line Norma Shearer says that you put on the Facebook? It's so fabulous.
Well, it isn't. So the last 2 months, no, I've had 2 years, Mother, to grow claws, jungle red.
She goes, I just love that. I thought it was so funny because she's almost so nice. She's like Melanie from Gone with the Wind. But as the movie progresses, she realized that if she wants to keep her man, she's going to have to fight for him. So,
and I suppose one last little interesting thing in my reading and research of the women is that Claire Luce Booth was actually more sympathetic toward the Crystal Allen character. She sympathized with her more than she did the other characters. And I don't know that if it was perhaps because it was a class thing. It was this simple shop girl who was pulling herself up by her bootstraps at any cost, throwing her morals into the trash can to marry up. But it was interesting.
It was hard for me to have any sympathy for her because I just thought she was. I thought she was a terrible person. So it was. But Joan Crawford can play that kind of person better than anybody in the world.
She did a great job.
I mean, she really knows, and she was married like
a multitude of times.
But it would be hard to be married. Can you imagine being married to her?
No.
Well, another movie we watched, the classic The Women. And so next week we're going to be having our Oscar party, 6:30 every Saturday night, Central Standard Time, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, and 4:30 out on the West Coast. So please join us, pass the word. Thank you for joining us, Lovelace. I'm going to go get my pajamas on and I'm going to go listen to your podcast. That's
me too.
So
I hope you enjoy it. And thank you, Kathy. I need to glam up.
Well, you go to Bollywood and Books. Is that what is the exact site to listen to your podcast? Oh, you're muted.
You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, any podcast player. You can visit the website, Bollywood and Books, or lovelacecook.com. And
we want to share you because you're one of our public queens, and I'm very excited I did an interview with you. I'm excited about when that's coming up. So I had a good time. It was really fun.
I did too. Thank you.
I love everything Bollywood. So it's just a lot of fun for me. And I guess we'll be talking soon, Robert.
Until next time.
Until next time.
Robert,
Bye, Lovelace. Bye-bye.